I was falsely accused of rape and abduction with intent to defile back in July of 2013. I spent 6 days in jail, forced to spend $60,000 on legal representation. As a 20-year-old, I faced the possibility of life in prison for a crime that never happened. I need to revisit the most traumatic experience of my life because I can't have any peace of mind knowing that there is a corrupt, antagonistic, evil, racist detective operating in my hometown. I survived the false accusation, but the damage has already been done. I need to keep talking about this because I have never received closure, nor have I ever received an iota of justice for what happened to me. In August of 2019, the Fairfax County Police Department actually contacted me in regards to one of my videos about my case. They claimed that they reviewed the video and would like to schedule a time to speak with me regarding the allegations that were made concerning a Fairfax County Police detective. I was cautiously optimistic. After many years of writing about my story and publishing videos about what happened to me, the Fairfax County Police are trying to do something good, right? In my very first phone call with the Internal Affairs Bureau, this is what they started asking for.
In order for me to complete a thorough investigation, I wanted to see if you still had access to the interviews and things like that you had posted in your video from the investigation that Detective DeCoster conducted.
I'm a little bit surprised. Do you not have access to it, or like is DeCoster unable to?
No, because you had your record in front, so with that comes all of our stuff is gone. We don't even have a case report anymore because when you made the request, they don't do it anymore, but at the time when you made the request, they deleted the report automatically.
So none of this makes sense because the file I got came from the prosecutor, and the prosecutor got this file from the police department, and now the police department's asking me for the files that originated from them. Are they trying to act cute, like as though this is the circle of life or something? There are just a few issues with this. If you Google expungement laws in Virginia, you'll see on the Virginia Legal Aid website that it clearly states that expungement does not mean the records are destroyed. Let's see what the Virginia Legal Aid website says verbatim. This does not mean the records are destroyed. Everything I possess in regards to my case files came from the police. This includes a recording of the telephone sting, a recording of my interrogation with DeCoster, a recording of Hassan's interview with DeCoster, a recording of Jenny's interview with DeCoster. The prosecutor, as a result of discovery, is obliged to disclose at least a part of their case files before the preliminary trial, where my case was ultimately dropped and then later expunged. Even my lawyer does not believe that the Fairfax County Police lost access to my files. So I quickly denied their request to view my copy of the files, and I told them that if you are genuinely interested in investigating Detective DeCoster's behavior, you will actively seek the files yourself since you have a copy. Subsequently, the Internal Affairs officer at the time, Sergeant Weeks, did interview me, and then I explained why I believe that Detective DeCoster is incompetent, racist, corrupt, and why he should have never arrested me. And I also explained that to any third party, it is obvious that Jenny and Hassan are lying about their accusations, and that it is obvious that based on the information that I have, that this crime never happened. I will give you the quick, too long didn't read version. Jenny Zhang claimed that I was a stranger who never had any sort of relationship with her. She has a friend named Hassan Kram, who was willing to testify that he picked up Jenny after the alleged crime took place. Out of the dozens of logical issues with their stories, the most glaring error was that their stories differed by over a year. Jenny said it happened sometime from March 1st to June 1st of 2012. Hassan claimed that he picked up Jenny right after it happened sometime in the spring of 2013. In 2012, I was a senior in high school. In the spring of 2013, I wasn't even in my hometown where the crime supposedly happened. How could they not coordinate to at least have the accusation be in the same year? On top of that, Detective DeCoster ignored hundreds of potential other witnesses that could testify that I was somewhere else. He also ignored 40,000 text messages that showed that I was in a relationship with Jenny, and the text messages generally could show where we were every single day. On the day of the preliminary hearing, Jenny continued to change details about her story. She went back and forth on whether it happened in 2012 or 2013, and she couldn't decide on a date, and she couldn't even decide on a year. If interested, please watch my other video for more details. Internal Affairs completed their investigation. It took them basically about 8 months, and here were their results. He completed a thorough and complete investigation. Second Lieutenant Weeks' investigation also revealed that race was not a factor in how Detective DeCoster handled this case.
You invited her to your house. You told her nobody was home, and she gets there and there's nobody there. And you push her on the floor beside your bed, between the dresser and the bed. You push her down on the floor. You get on top of her. You hold her arms down where she can't move.
This never happened.
And then you tell her to get up, and she's not moving quick enough for you, so you grab her. She then shoves you off, and she stands up on her own, and she tries to walk past you. And you don't let her. You're standing in her way. She tells you to get out of her way. She's crying. She's saying to let her go, but you don't get out of her way. You then push her down on the bed and sexually assault her. That's the story as she tells it.
Hold on. Yelling at me? Demanding me to confess to a crime that I did not commit? Not noticing the major discrepancies between your two witnesses? That's considered conducting a complete and thorough investigation? If this is your definition of complete and thorough, then my God, I don't want to think about the number of innocent people that are probably sitting in jail as a result of these complete and thorough investigations. What is more disturbing? The police's denial of racism and incompetence, or the fact that the institution that has sworn to serve and protect the public behaves more like a toxic fraternal cult that has no cognitive ability to do anything positive? Either way, it's disturbing as fuck. Shortly after receiving the disposition letter, I had a chance to speak to Captain Alan Hansen from the Internal Affairs Bureau. Here's why he deserves a gold medal for mental gymnastics.
So, from the exact quote, maybe in your family's culture, comma, and I understand it, comma, or there was a pause, women are kind of looked at as second-class citizens or something like that. So that was the verbiage that we had from that.
Maybe in your family's culture, and I understand it, women are kind of looked at as second-class citizens or something like that in your eyes. I don't know.
This was viewed more of as an exploratory statement. Part of that, when we interviewed him, he talked about in certain cultures, people are viewed as second-class citizens. It was viewed in that context. It wasn't viewed as something that was biased in nature, but more of an exploratory question, trying to understand your mindset.
That comment is deemed as appropriate.
It was not deemed as biased.
What about appropriate? What about sensitive? What about fair?
Well, he's trying to understand what your viewpoint is and your view on life. So that's fair. I mean, you're trying to understand somebody that you're interviewing and what their outlook on life is. He said he was trying to understand your mindset and trying to understand, maybe provoke a discussion with you on that lane. You didn't respond to it, and so he just moved on.
Mr. Zhang, DeCoster just wanted to invite you to have a very eloquent, vivid discussion on Chinese and Chinese-American cultural dynamics in order to satisfy his very diverse intellectual curiosities. He just wanted to provoke thoughtful and meaningful conversation. Bullshit. What the hell? How can you say that when you can see DeCoster is not allowing me to speak, he's constantly interrupting me, and he's not allowing me to question the accusation? You can see that he's employing some unintelligent, toxic, malicious tactic that he learned at some course at a Reed Method interrogation school in order to make me falsely confess to a crime that I did not commit. Captain Alan Hansen is making it sound like this is some sort of weird platonic Tinder date and that I'm some exchange student from China who's expected to tell DeCoster about East Asian cultural and gender norms. What's so fucking annoying is that Captain Alan Hansen is ignoring the fact that this is an interrogation. DeCoster is not trying to understand my world. He's there to try to procure a false confession in order to make it easier to convict me. Want to know what else is disturbing as fuck?
Investigator spoke with Miss Grace Edwardson. She was the prosecutor assigned to that case. She described Detective DeCoster's case file as thorough and complete. This is what we're getting from the Commonwealth Attorney. That's what she had recalled at the time. She advised that the file contained the information that she would expect to receive as a prosecutor.
No, this is not true. I was at my own bail hearing in a green Fairfax County jail jumpsuit, bound in handcuffs. My sister, my mother, my lawyer, and I were all present. And I remember the day before my bail hearing that my lawyer told me that DeCoster and the prosecutor will certainly be there to argue against my bail, especially given how serious the charges are. They're going to say anything to keep me in jail forever. The awkward thing is that DeCoster was too chicken shit to show up, and the judge and prosecutor were asking for him. The prosecutor even called him on his cell phone to no avail. So the judge just awkwardly said, well, if you're not going to say anything, I gotta let this guy go. And that's what happened. It's just so strange that Captain Alan Hansen is making it sound like, oh no, they were always working together, and DeCoster was constantly communicating with the prosecutor. That's all bullshit. So regarding this detail, I don't know if the prosecutor is lying in order to cover DeCoster's ass, or if DeCoster is lying as usual to cover his own ass, or if Captain Alan Hansen's lying to cover everyone's ass. I just know that there's a lot of ass covering going on. Want to know what else is disturbing as fuck? Part 2.
Things I sort of want to address also, for example, text messages. Why couldn't DeCoster ask for that earlier, before he arrested me, or before he went to the magistrate?
Yeah, and I'm not sure. So I can't speak to that. I'm speaking generally here. Investigators, detectives try to build their case as they go, and they obtain information that they deem pertinent at that time. And when they have enough probable cause, they present that.
Kind of the lack of coherence or connections. As I pointed out very clearly, all my videos and articles also, your discrepancy between their testimonies. I can't imagine that being a small misstep or a small mistake. I'm surprised that Coster didn't catch that.
Yeah, I can't say why he or didn't catch that at the time.
Was it recognized that, for whatever reason, it wasn't caught?
So, yeah, in the totality of an investigation, you would like everything to be perfect. You would want everything to be perfect. So if there was a discrepancy there, then he should have caught it. But really, that did not happen at the time. Well, again, we don't know what bring that had on the totality of the case because we don't have the whole case.
Captain Hansen, make up your mind. Was this a complete and thorough investigation or not? In your shitty disposition letter that you wrote to me, you told me that DeCoster conducted a complete and thorough investigation, but you're also admitting that he made several dumb mistakes and that he should have done things such as ask for the text messages before choosing to financially and emotionally scar me for the rest of my life. And he could have interviewed hundreds of other witnesses before choosing to waste the time of judges and lawyers and taxpayers' money. I feel deceived by cop shows I used to watch, such as CSI, Monk, Sherlock, because they would always do this awesome segment of how did this happen, or here's what happened, and then it would describe the meticulous investigation process.
This is my favorite part, where everybody stands around and you sum up the case. Yeah, me too, thanks.
I just figured that cops in real life would be somewhat similar, but no. The only thing that you guys are interested in are getting convictions and meeting your quotas. Want to know what else is disturbing as fuck? Part 3. There is another case that is being discussed publicly that DeCoster screwed up. He coerced a young man who goes by Russell to falsely confessing to molesting a child. It wasn't until the trial phase, during the cross-examination process, when the lawyers get to interview witnesses, did DeCoster finally admit that he forced a false confession out of the defendant.
And you're minimizing things, you're leaving some things out, you're lying, that you had a momentary lapse in judgment, you made a bad decision, but you're not a bad guy. You speak English, you haven't been violent, you've been cooperative, everything I told you is knowledge, we're grateful.
It's funny, because the Washington and Lee University School of Law uses this case as an example of how police produce false confessions. The full transcript is available on the Washington and Lee University School of Law website, and I posted a link to the transcript of that cross-examination and DeCoster's interrogation of Russell in the video description below. Here is a quote from the Washington and Lee University School of Law website that details the conclusion of that case. In addition to challenging the confession, we had some DNA evidence that didn't fit with the detective's theory of what happened to the children. Shapiro says that confessions are extremely difficult to combat, and that without that additional DNA evidence, Russell would probably be sitting in jail. So DeCoster has a known and recorded history of being an unapologetic jackass who has no problem with arresting innocent people and trying to get them convicted. But want to know what else is disturbing as fuck? Part 4.
You're providing very limited information and details back to us. I mean, I understand that you have the whole case file, but you can provide that to us. We don't have the rest of the information.
To be quite frank, my lawyer and I don't completely believe that. Even Mr. is questioning the fact that there's absolute no access to the case files from Zhang versus Commonwealth. It's questionable. That's why I was a bit alarmed when Sergeant Weeks at the time asked for the case files, because I just assumed that expungement doesn't mean destruction of records. That's how I understand it and how it was explained to me.
No, it means destruction of records, that we cannot retain anything related to the case. That's my understanding of expungement.
So the police are still bothering me for the case files. So besides the fact that Virginia law clearly states that expungement means records are sealed and not destroyed, I decided to do further research. I called the Virginia Library Records Management Section, which assists state and local government in ensuring that public records are maintained and available. They have not received a certificate of destruction from the Fairfax County Police Department regarding my case, which is something they would possess if something as sensitive as a police file were to be destroyed. I wanted to go even further. I made a couple of Freedom of Information Act requests, and I was able to get my hands on recordings of phone calls I made from the Fairfax County Jail. If my files were truly destroyed, I shouldn't have been able to get my hands on these files. I went even further. I simply asked the Fairfax County Police Department Media Relations Bureau if they had a copy of my case files. They responded with, "That is correct." Whoa, that's a little awkward. So why the hell is the Fairfax County Police Department bothering me about the case files? According to Captain Alan Hansen, they can't conduct an internal review on DeCoster without the case files. But according to 3 different sources, and one of the sources being the Fairfax County Police Department themselves, they confirmed that they have a copy of all the files from that case. It's just so funny that they are asking the subject of the investigation for information on that very same investigation, and that they're blaming me for the fact that they don't have the information from their own investigation. I can only conjecture that the Fairfax County Police are interested in seeing what incriminating information I have so that they can prepare some bullshit template responses to anything that I might expose. I see no incentive to give them any copies of my files. They have a fucking copy. They can look at it themselves. In short, it seems like the Fairfax County Police are not genuinely interested in investigating themselves. Go figure. In every interaction I've had with them, they've been trying to pressure me to disclose what I have. Want to know what else is disturbing as fuck? Not only is DeCoster immune to any sort of scrutiny, I tried complaining about Lieutenant Weeks and Captain Alan Hansen's behavior because of the fact that they're obviously lying about not having the files or the files getting deleted, whatever bullshit they're talking about. When I tried making that complaint and tried confronting them with evidence that they still have the files, they coincidentally stopped asking me for copies of my files, and they've also coincidentally stopped returning my phone calls and emails. So who's going to police the police? Who's going to be the internal affairs for their internal affairs? I tried the civilian review panel, and this is what they told me. The civilian review panel has to kind of funnel their complaints through the police for the police, not necessarily to approve, but the police are aware of the complaints that are being made. So they are essentially in control of this complaint process and that circulation of complaints. That's what it sounds like to me. And as you mentioned, with recent parallel national headlines, I think this is a concerning issue, right?
Yeah, and it's, again, I can only say that changes are being explored.
Mm-hmm.
I have no control over whether those changes are implemented, but they are being explored.
The civilian review panel essentially has to go through the police in order to
have an investigation conducted.
Yes, in order to have an investigation conducted, the civilian review panel needs to go through the police, right? Which I imagine only inhibits the civilian review panel.
Well, what inhibits the civilian review panel is the action item drafted by the Board of Supervisors. They're limited on what they can review based on that enabling legislation.
Yeah, maybe I've just had a huge misunderstanding. Civilian review panel doesn't really have the authority to investigate. They're just a communicator.
They do not have the authority to investigate. All they can do is review an investigation which was completed by the police department. Because again, the panel right now does not investigate. They communicate the complaint to the police department for the police department to investigate. So
any complaint that they receive gets looked over by the police. The civilian review panel in its current form can really only forward complaints to the police, which doesn't make sense because the complaints are about the police, but they're forwarding the complaints to the police. So I think that's pretty useless. And also, the civilian review panel doesn't really have much authority to actually adjudicate anything. And if a complaint somehow moves forward, the police kind of just investigate each other, and that doesn't really seem objective or third-party-ish at all. We investigated ourselves and found that we were completely innocent. It would be like if I worked at a store and someone saw me steal $100 from the cash register. Rightfully so, they make a complaint. I then get to investigate the complaint. I then get to determine whether this complaint moves on to my manager or not. And to add another layer of accountability, I let my BFF investigate my behavior. Seems pretty fair, right? Do you think anyone in any industry, in any profession, would allow a complaint about themselves move forward up the hierarchy if they could simply veto it or have their BFF determine the outcome? Given the reality of the police dynamic in this country, Captain Hansen, Detective DeCoster, Lieutenant Weeks, there are no anomalies. If anything, there are multiple DeCosters, Hansens, Weeks that are operating in this country as we speak. I spoke to several people within the Fairfax County legal system who would never dare to speak up, and I understand their concern. According to them, they have explained that DeCoster has this reputation for being a bully, for manipulating facts, for lying, for putting words in people's mouths. Considering who he is as a person and as a professional, I don't like thinking about the number of innocent people he must have arrested and possibly convicted. And his buddy, Captain Alan Hansen, and everyone else at the Fairfax County Police Department will unconditionally vindicate him, even if it means licking his ass and performing incredible mental gymnastics. That is the culture of the police today. I will never give them what they want. And I'm not talking about my police files, which I won't give them either. What they want is for my story to die in obscurity. They want stories like mine to become irrelevant and to become forgotten. I will never let that happen. As a victim of a false accusation and a malicious investigation, I have an obligation to continue to call out corrupt cops like DeCoster and Hansen. Who knows? DeCoster is a bully, and according to bastard cops, the culture within the police department is pretty toxic. So maybe DeCoster bullies Hansen and Weeks, and that's why they feel the need to lick his ass day and night. Just a guess. Let's use DeCoster's language to describe how I feel.
You haven't cleaned up shit.
That's right, DeCoster, Captain Hansen, Fairfax County Police. You haven't cleaned up shit. The police are essentially immune to accountability because of their qualified immunity, and any good cop that tries to speak out will run into issues like these.
Joe Crystal, a detective who had reported 2 fellow officers for alleged excessive force and was labelled a rat, with one colleague leaving pictures of cheese on his desk.
Found himself cut off. He says he didn't get backup in dangerous situations. Someone even left a dead rat on his windshield.
It was like their way of telling me, you don't belong here. This is what we think of you.
I've lived in an authoritarian country with a sophisticated propaganda system. The explanations the Fairfax County Police give for their incompetence and racism completely parallels the doublethink that I've heard during my time in communist China. So much for the USA being a beacon of justice, freedom, and equality. If American cops behave just as bad or worse compared to police forces in authoritarian states, that's a really profound symptom of foundational problems in this country. One favor I need to ask you, especially if you live in Virginia or Fairfax County, is to help me contact the Fairfax County Police, Lieutenant Weeks, Captain Hansen, and DeCoster himself. You can contact them at these numbers and these emails. Their contact info is also in the video description below. Please help me explain how DeCoster is a dangerous, inept, racist, corrupt detective who shouldn't be operating and should be charged for his crimes. All of his previous cases must be reviewed as well. We also need to pressure Captain Hansen and the Internal Affairs Bureau to actually do their job and to stop gaslighting me. If enough people apply pressure, then maybe, just maybe, Fairfax County Police will be able to make some amendments. If not, then the Fairfax County Police will have no reason to compensate any victims of police abuse. In a perfect fairy tale world, my false accuser, Jenny Zhang, would face charges for filing a false police report. The Fairfax County Police would issue a public apology and promise that none of this will ever happen again. My legal expenses will be compensated, and DeCoster himself would face charges for abusing me, for falsely arresting me, and for lying to a magistrate to get warrants for my arrest. What a bunch of shitty pipe dreams. Detective DeCoster and Jenny must face charges for the crimes they've committed. Captain Alan Hansen and the Internal Affairs Bureau have to stop their silly gaslighting and actually be prepared to do their job. I hate to say it, the DeCosters, the Hansens, the Weeks, the Jennys of the world are in a very safe position. That's why it is imperative to continue to call out their shitty criminal behavior until we can get the right legislation passed that will be able to erode their capabilities to participate in brutality and abuse of power that continues to hurt countless innocent people in this country today. My name is Victor Zhang, and thank you very much for watching.